for September the 26th, 2025. About 9:11 p.m. Just about. We're a few seconds early. So I have a list of things to talk about. It's just getting more and more interesting times. And things have picked up. I mean, honestly, psyops are good for business. Things were lagging. I was not sure how to make things move again. And luckily, September 10th happened. Although the subway stabbing kind of lit a fire under this, but the Charlie Kirk thing really has accelerated. And it's brought the topic of predictive programming to a new level. And as most of you know, the average news consumer doesn't know how to process predictive programming. The best they can do is deny it exists, or mock it, or say it's selectivity bias and Texas sharpshooter fallacy. No, I'm sorry, but empirical research kind of throws that explanation out the window. We know what it is. And when I say we, I mean the IPS think tank. Still, a lot of people out there are confused. They don't know if it means they're video game characters or if the devil did it. Like, they're confused. Higher powers, lower powers. They haven't figured out that the same people who are faking the events are responsible for all concurrent programming, reinforcement, psyop reinforcement content. And it's a pattern, it's systemic, standard operating procedure, it's a feature, not a bug. So we know what we're looking at. In fact, we were predicting this. But it's getting better because a lot of people are honing in on the Nicolas Cage connections, the Snake Eyes connections, where a politician named Charlie Kirkland is killed during a boxing match, shot on the same side of his neck as Charlie Kirk. So yeah, Charlie Kirkland. One of the boxers is the AC executioner named Tyler. Takes place during Hurricane Jezebel, which has some fascinating connections to the more recent Tempest, to Erika Kirk herself, and to the Jezebel witches, which also brings in another body of predictive programming that ties into the Charlie Kirk thing, which is the movie Weapons and the Annunciation school shooting, which I'm going to elaborate on all of this in detail tomorrow as far as the 217 Weapons movie of the Annunciation shooting, because there's quite a lot there. But for right now, what we're seeing is an explosion of people noticing the Snake Eyes thing. So what I'm doing here, because the whole conversation is going to be guardrailed. They're trying to deliberately mislead people on what it means. So I'm informing the same people, and hey, you got to look at the Tempest, because not only does it mirror what happened to Charlie Kirk, and not only was it released on the same day, but 4 days before, Kirk was in South Korea, essentially playing the role of his character who was about to be killed, in a church setting with these youth Republicans praying over him. I mean, it's incredible. But when people see that, it changes the conversation, because we're not talking about something from a long time ago. We're talking about something right now, concurrent. And that asks a lot of questions, but also rules out bad explanations. So we can move on from the previous explanations did not suffice. But now here's what I wanted to get into tonight, because we were discussing not only the movies, but the entire surrounding atmosphere. Like the would-be Trump assassin, Ryan Routh, trying to stab himself in the neck. And if you look at the picture, the courtroom sketch, it's exactly where Kirk was hit, supposedly. I mean, a lot of people also are looking at alternative explanations. Ian Carroll, Owen Schroyer, all of them are just up to their necks in second shooters. They're up to like second shooter number 17. It's like, okay, obviously they're not allowed to go much further than that. I think Candace Owens is now saying that TPUSA did it. I'm waiting for them to say it was a direct energy weapon. Actually, they've said them. Oh no, Stu Peters is saying that the microphone exploded, or some kind of secret weapon built into that. But what you'll notice, though, is that there's a lot more people talking about squibs. And this is great, because what separates the off-world stage from world stage interpretation, what separates it is the acknowledgement of special effects and media fakery. So the fact you have people talking about potential special effects is a huge leap forward. But you'll notice they're not being acknowledged. Candace Owens, Owen Schroyer, Ian Carroll, they won't talk about squibs. They're not allowed to say it. They'll say, no, maybe it was another shooter who was in the tunnel. No, it was a drone. No, it was, and again, they won't make up any number of things, anything at all, to not say squib. Because to say squib means Kirk's not dead, and they can't have that as their starting point. So you're having an increasingly large body of people who are completely off-world stage here, saying it's fake. And you know what? They don't have a platform. And that's how they're able to control these conversations. So what we can do now is we can leverage the concurrent programming in the Tempest to get the conversation shifted away from we're confused, we don't know, simulation. We can actually get people to recognize, no, what we're looking at are simulated events passed off as real. And we can look at how these things are presented in both entertainment and in the news media, always at the same time. And you know, I was discussing this before a few days ago, how you have that director of The Manchurian Candidate, a movie released around the Kennedy assassination. The director, friends with JFK. The movie is about a mind-controlled shooter. Oswald apparently watched it. Some suggested it might have caused him to go do the shooting. My point is, that same director, Frankenheimer, was hanging out with RFK on the way to the Ambassador Hotel when he was assassinated. So there's this ongoing pattern, it goes way back, where the major transformative events, the big psyops, are basically examples where the government is using the best directors to simulate events. And this is not new. But they've been hiding this for a long time. And they've been hiding this because they don't want people to know about the world stage fakery. They want you to think stuff is real. So you're allowed to be a conspiracy theorist as long as your starting point is somebody died. Anyway, one of the things that we've been discussing lately are hoax indicators. So the fact that you have planted narratives that fit a template, that's a hoax indicator. Any indication of fakery needs to be examined in this context, because before somebody can rest on the mainstream version, the burden of proof is on them or the media. Yeah, it's on the media and its advocates to deal with the hoax indicators and to refute them. And right now, they've dismissed the predictive stuff. They've ignored it, they've mocked it, they've laughed. But now, the stuff that is aligning real time cannot be denied. And now it's getting even more intricate. Like some of the stuff that I was talking about the other day, I put it in that video, is how Joe Rogan was talking to Charlie Sheen, who released a video on 9/10, this comeback video. So they're talking, and in their conversation, Charlie Sheen talks about somebody throwing something from a balcony, sniping him, hitting him in the eye, basically. And then Joe Rogan's like, that was such a good shot. And then Rogan inexplicably kind of just, I guess there's a reason he was trying to exaggerate his response. Well, he played like he was getting shot. And these are just weird gestures. Each of them talking about getting shot or pantomiming it, just basically feigning it. Why would he do this? During a conversation about JFK. It doesn't make sense until you see that, well, at the end of the episode, they announced the Charlie Kirk shooting. So the whole episode was kind of containing elements of what I would consider duper's delight, where they're alluding to the event as it's happening. Even Rogan's shirt with the arrowhead on it seemed a little conspicuous. But my point is, Charlie Sheen, Charlie popping out at the same time, we're noticing these patterns where the references to JFK and Charlie, you see the association here. In fact, so they're talking about JFK. Charlie's talking about getting sniped. Rogan says, nice shot. Then they talk about Charlie Kirk. So we're talking about this echo chamber and repeated themes, what I called concerted messaging in other instances. But the concerted messaging around Charlie Kirk has been JFK. It's been inserted into it quite frequently. Even Roger Stone said that before Kirk died, he called him and said, hey, let's talk about JFK. These aren't coincidences. And the way this event is being interpreted is exactly the way people interpreted the JFK event. It's a template, is my point. Hoax indicator. Thank you, Reality Witness, Tim's Gas Fund. Tom Fries, thanks, Tim. You got me through 2020. Thank you. Yeah, 2020 was a trip, but it was a big revelation. And I think what we're going to see here soon is a repeat of it, but from the other angle. The right is now agitated. But I think this time the lockdown is going to be the internet because of mind viruses. This is where they introduced the digital ID to get on social media, which is basically, if you want to socialize, put on a mask. You want to socialize online, get your digital ID. They're getting people ready to accept this. And I sort of predicted this, actually I did, in Meta-script Decoded, which I published in 2020, where I said that there was going to be a televised assassination used as a pretext for broad censorship because it's inflammatory. At the time, I thought it was going to be somebody else, and I have a lot of reasons for pointing this person out. Side topic. But to get back on to tonight's topic, so we're talking about snake eyes. And in snake eyes, and I didn't mention this in my video, the name of the hurricane is Jezebel. And Jezebel pops up because Erika Kirk says that the Jezebel witches cursed her and her husband a couple days before that thing happened. So this ties in to the movie Weapons, where it's literally a witch who's doing curses that's killing the people in the movie, but it's a school shooting allegory. And the witch corresponds to the redheaded Order of Nine Angels satanic Nazi shooter who shot up the church at the Annunciation event. And that's the movie that had the 217 plastered all over it, which I'll get into later. The 217, the number, has to do with gun control, some gun control bill. And interestingly, it happens to be Turning Point USA's address. And this is highly significant because the whole Turner Diaries subtext is about gun control. Because remember, Waco, where McVeigh, who was inspired by the Turner Diaries to attack the Oklahoma City government building, that McVeigh was at Waco, and that radicalized him when the Branch Davidians were burned. Same thing, Alex Jones too. But why were they raided? It was the ATF. It was because of weapons violations. So it's always been about they're gonna take the guns. That's what Alex Jones has always been talking about. So it's another element to the Charlie Kirk thing is he's talking about guns and gun control, and then he gets sniped by somebody who is also correlated with the Annunciation shooter because of the trans, furry, Antifa stuff. So anyway, my point is there's some fascinating correlations between his shooter, the killer in the movie, the witch, and the church shooter. Again, shot up a church, and then Kirk's name is Church. So there's some, you'll see. But let's get back on track here. The storm Jezebel may correlate, in fact it probably does, to Erika Kirk, who is called the Storm during the Charlie Kirk Memorial. And the show that came out on 9/10, where the main character, who looks like he's basically Charlie Kirk, gets shot in a church in the neck, that show's called The Tempest, which is a storm. And it's basically about this woman, the widow, who is essentially a storm. She's a personification of a transformative force, like Erika Kirk is being propped up to be. So we're going to get more into the witches of Jezebel tomorrow. But I want to talk about this music video she's in, which is called Emerson Drive. I think, or is that the band? So she's in this country music video. Lean Dion says, Erika Kirk hosting the latest Charlie Kirk show and could not stop smiling. Well, you know, 13 years ago, she was in this music video where they're in Las Vegas. And she's swinging on a rope from the rafters, or she's doing this like one of those ropes that they slide across the ceiling. It's in Fremont, on Fremont Street. So she's passing the Fremont sign, and the number above her is 910. And people in the comments of this video have noted this because, of course, 910 is the date that Charlie Kirk was shot. But what gets really strange is that if you look in the comments 13 years ago, she said in the comment section, "What a blast Tyler and I had shooting this video." So what a blast Tyler and I had shooting this video. Tyler, 910. a little peculiar, and people are calling her out in the comments there. So what would you call that? Well, you could say, well, it's 13 years ago. Well, it's predictive programming. This is an indication that his martyrdom was scripted before he entered the world stage. That this is a role. It's quite literally what we're looking at here. And if you think that's far-fetched, well, look, Snake Eyes was 1998. That's 27 years ago. So we're talking about lifetime roles, legends. We're talking about a completely fabricated, phony, made-for-TV, reality TV style life. And it's not that difficult to conceptualize if you recognize how many of the psychological operations that we live through were planned a long time ago. Well, they planned the people the same way they planned the events. These things are hand in glove. So now I was thinking about this. Yeah, that's another thing. He was 31. There was a show called Lost, where a character named Charlie gets shot in the throat by an arrow, in fact, and the actor was 31 at the time. Now, I was talking about, in one of my blogs here, what I called a meta-script in the music, because we're always talking about movies, video games, books, but the musicians also carry a lot of the propaganda messaging. So I was thinking about this because last year, on the 61st anniversary of the JFK assassination, Marilyn Manson releases One Assassination Under God. And I thought, okay, that could be foreshadowing the Trump thing, but it couldn't really be predictive or concurrent because it was after the fact. So I've been thinking about this. I'm like, wait a minute. If you look at the body of predictive programming for Trump, at no point does he actually get killed. In all the examples, he survives it, as he did in Butler. So then I'm thinking, well, One Assassination Under God then might actually be about this Charlie Kirk. So I'm thinking about this, and I'm like, wait a minute here. If you look back at Marilyn Manson's work, you have examples of what you would consider to be concurrent programming. So he releases an album, and they're like, oh, that inspires the Columbine shooters. And then they get him involved in the conversation. And then you have the more peculiar one, and this is the one I'm focusing on because it has to do with JFK, where he releases a video called Coma White, and they delay it. They delay the video because of the death of JFK Jr. What's up, Hidden Hand? Here's your wrench. So JFK Jr. dies, and Marilyn Manson and MTV, they literally postpone a video release. So that's why I'm saying there is an involvement here. His work is relevant to the psyops. So we're looking at, again, meta-script. And in this case, it's because the video, which was based on a script called Hollywood, is about the second coming of Christ, but it's JFK and he dies. And so the people are mourning, and the song, according to the script, and I put the quotes in my blog, it's about how they're waiting for now their new savior, the third Jesus, who would of course be JFK Jr. So the song is not in the lyrics, but in the script and in the visuals, there's the Kennedy family involvement. You got JFK on a cross. Marilyn Manson is JFK in the video. So I'm rewatching this video, and I'm reading the commentary on it, where he's like, yeah, this is about the third Jesus. And yet, as the video comes out, JFK Jr. dies. So that's a little bit of irony, but for some reason, MTV felt it had to be addressed. So I'm looking at this in that context. His work has consistently riffed off of these psyops. Well, I'm watching the video again to see, well, is this some kind of foreshadowing? Is this related to the One Assassination Under God? Because what we're looking at here in the video is the association of JFK with Jesus, with the sacrificial savior. These themes are being brought up again. So watching the video, anyone care to guess where Manson gets shot while he's acting as JFK? What's up, Ted Stryker? Thanks for joining. Yep, in the neck. He gets shot in the neck. So I'm like, okay, wait a minute here. So my presupposition was, it could be that One Assassination Under God, the tour that's happening right now, could be what you would consider programming Psyop reinforcement programming for a major transformative Psyop, a big event. And furthermore, to add on to this, a lot of people have noted not only the JFK stuff around Charlie Kirk, we've talked about this, but also the King Kill 33 stuff. You know, like the shooter getting caught after 33 hours. Well, this all harkens back to the work of James Shelby Downard, who wrote King Kill 33, which is an article about what we do. But this is a while ago, where he was writing about the subtext of the JFK assassination, suggesting it was a ritual, a Masonic ritual. Now, he didn't think it was staged and fake, but that's fine. His analysis of the symbolism is what we're referring to. So Marilyn Manson has a song called King Kill 33. So you can't really say he doesn't know the meaning of this. So I'm just looking at this thinking, maybe one assassination under God was more or less foreshadowing for the Charlie Kirk thing. And if you look at the concept of it, one assassination, it's a combination of assassination and nation. The idea of founding a nation on a sacrifice. And this Charlie Kirk thing has been called a sacrifice. And you could look at TP USA, Turning Point USA, almost as the founding of a nation. It's about this major epicenter now of Christian nationalism exploding in a very political way. But it's, as I said, it's a sacrificial event. And this was cited by even Jack Posobiec. He said, if you look 100 years from now, they're going to say that this was the turning point that saved Western civilization, the sacrifice of Charlie Kirk. So you have the Jesus Christification, the JFKification of Charlie Kirk built into this narrative from multiple fronts in many different ways. But now to add to it, you have Marilyn Manson on tour with the song One Assassination Under God, with JFK references, obviously, in the release date and otherwise. But his work has already been associated with mainstream psyops. And as he's touring, Charlie Kirk dies. And so I listened to the song, and some of the lyrics, they're kind of sparse. There's not a whole lot of specifics, but there's references to sacrifice. In the video, there's a goat. So the sacrificial goat, the scapegoat, also kind of a Christ reference in the sense of the scapegoat, the ritual of the goat absorbing all the sin, dying for the sins of the tribe, etc. So there's that element to it, but it has in the chorus about you will always be entertained. And I kind of think that's one of the main points here. We're talking about pageantry. We're talking about the state creating myths that are grafted onto our consensus agreement in terms of what happened. So our shared history of events is being infused with a lot of drama. It's all entertainment. They're using entertainment as a form of governance. I mean, that's one of the things to take away from the concurrent and predictive programming that people are looking at right now, that we've been talking about for a long time. We're talking about entertainment as an instrument of government. Plain Dakota says, well, now we know that Brian De Palma is a major meta-scriptor director and he's still alive. So that's the director of Snake Eyes, right? And wasn't he born on 9/11? Going through your comments, Diana says, I hate the Scott on the Zoom call. Oh, yeah, you know what? I have a plan for the next one. We're going to do Zooms every week. There's going to be a couple, actually. There's going to be one Zoom for the IPR Press Club. But we're going to have another Zoom, PSYOP-specific Zoom calls. But the new format's going to be 20 minutes where I will talk about the content, and then 10 or 15 minutes of dialogue with whoever has something to add. And I think if we go back and forth like that, we'll get more of a content-focused call, less rambling, and we'll have some natural barriers there. So we won't have any kind of issues in the future. It'll be more listenable. But yeah, that's a great point, Plain Decoded. So these directors are what we should be looking at. Forget the crisis actors who wrote the story. And when you start looking at the directors, it gives you a whole lot of insight into how this thing works. And what the controlled opposition for years has done is it has, instead of focusing on the directors of these movies, they would direct people to outlandish theories to explain what they're seeing. And I'm glad that we haven't seen any of that here. I'm glad that we don't see anybody running around talking about the usual misinformation talking points, which are really just outmoded. Like, we know what we're looking at. And this all really rests on a couple of foundational points here. One being that this is theater, that it's like movies, it's a simulated event, that nobody's really dying. And then two, these events are planned long in advance. And as such, not only are they planned long in advance for a lot of logistical reasons, but it really shows you how our history is a construct. History is a construct. It's an agreed upon version of things. All right, so let's see here. Plain Decoded says when he was working on that, you're talking about the director, Brian De Palma, when he made the video, he was working for Buena Vista Distributions, which is a subsidiary of Disney. Right, and it's Disney Hulu that released the Tempest. And so the Tempest is where I'm at now. I got to watch the next episode, because if you didn't follow it, it opens up with the New Republicans. This is in South Korea, the leader of the youth. And then he's all about capturing the hearts of the youth. And he's even talking about how he's an easy target, as Kirk was talking about how he was likely to be killed. I mean, this is a parallel. So Charlie Kirk literally goes over there and speaks to the youth politician, the youth Republican political group, and they pray over him days before it happened, before he gets shot in real life as his corresponding character in a South Korean movie series on Hulu gets shot in the neck. I mean, this is one of the best examples we have of this aspect of media. Like, it's pretty out in the open. But I mean, if you, even just looking at that, you like the timing, the placement of the wound, that's just way too many coincidences. Yeah, but then you got to follow the story of the widow and how she's coached to basically cry on TV to win people over. How she takes over her husband's organization. How people suspect that she might even be behind his assassination, and we're seeing a lot of that. But the interesting thing is, at the end of episode 3, it cuts to a submarine and a nuke. And so I'm thinking Tempest, Storm, there may be some foreshadowing here. Matt Hayslip says 3006 does not do that type of damage. Yeah, my best guess, I mean, look, I don't have any reason to believe he was really shot. And they want people to debate. Like, they'll say, oh no, he had the Superman neck. Which, again, so you may look at the Superman thing as a silly story. Man of Steel, he stopped the bullet with his neck, he saved a life. But you have to remember that Superman is not just some silly comic book character. If you watch the latest movie, it's very Christ-coded. So after the shooter runs off to Dairy Queen, he's posing, he's caught on camera, and he's next to a Superman poster. So you already have that connection. But if you watch the Superman movie, it begins and he narrates it. He's like, I lost my first fight after 3 decades, 3 years, 3 months, and 3 days on this planet. So you have a savior from the heavens, from space. He gets his powers from the sun, a solar savior from above, and he's 33 years old. So you can see all the Christ code all over Superman, and they also superimpose that over Charlie Kirk and made it a miracle. So again, the savior, Superman is basically an archetypal savior, and what they have done, what I'm observing here, is that they're not just stealing from religious sources because they're out of ideas. No, they're replacing. It's a syncretic creation. But they want people to be debating over first shooter, second shooter, just like they did with JFK. Grassy Knoll, book depository. Was it Jackie? Was it the driver? Was it somebody from the sewer? They have all kinds of alternative theories that all presume he was killed. Your starting point, and this is axiomatic. If there's any hoax indicators at all, just one, and we've got a lot of them. But if there are any hoax indicators, you must assume nothing. They said 10 people died. Well, there's some hoax indicators here. Okay, well, then we have to assume nobody died until we can prove otherwise. So it is up to the media or its advocates to demonstrate to us why those hoax indicators can be refuted. If they can't refute this stuff, if they can't somehow explain the significance of what we're describing as far as the concurrent, the predictive, not to mention other aspects of it that are fishy, like, for example, deviations from standard protocol with police or EMTs. There's a host of things. They have to address that stuff before the starting point can be Kirk is dead. So logically speaking, the starting point is no, he's not dead. Squib. It's a squib. What's up, level heading? Here is your wrench. Says, I like the new look, Tim. Gorilla Gonzo. Yeah, we'll be in a new headquarters soon enough. Yeah, JJ's Scenographic says, isn't Tyler the guard in Masonry? Yeah, the Tyler is the guy, and it's not spelled the same way, but it's the same. The Tyler is the one who guards the door with the sword, because what happens is the world exists in a place of darkness and ignorance, and those who have the light want to guard it. That's why when they bring you in, there's a bag over your head. The bag, the hoodwink, the wool sack, it symbolizes the ignorance of the profane. When they're brought in, they're shown the light, but they got to guard it with the Tyler because they don't want the profane to have access to the secrets. And I know this because after the military, I was really enamored with the whole thing, and I got some of the officers in my unit to sign me in. So I got into it, and then after that, I got into a different organization. I kind of moved around a little bit, but I noticed the common denominators, and they all have the same basic structure, which is the masses are in darkness, and that's what we get Illuminati from. Those who are shown the light now have insights they don't. They have the wool pulled off of their eyes. And so right now, and this is my assessment, but I think I'm right here, the hoodwink that the masses wear is the black mirror. It's the movie screen, it's your TV screen, it's your phone screen. It's the filtered version of things. It's the version of reality that has been curated for you. That is the hoodwink. And the initiates would be those who are on the other side, the meta-scriptors, the programmers, the ones who have high enough security clearance. It's not a secret society, it's a security clearance society. But those who are in the know have had the screen removed from their perspective. What we call the off-world stage perspective. Hidden Hand says, Turning Point launched in UK from a Grand Master's building. Well, another aspect of Turning Point that needs to be emphasized is it's not specifically connected, at least not openly, to the Turner Diaries, but I made that connection back in 2020, and I've been totally vindicated. Because you cannot separate Turner Diaries from the gun grab thing, from weapons, and from Christian nationalism. You can't separate that from the Turner Diaries, and Turning Point USA essentially platformed the Turner Diaries. And it's really not a coincidence that one of Charlie Kirk's last appearances was to hype up the death of the girl in the subway as a George Floyd moment. Because you're seeing the black and the white, the martyrs on each side, which are villains to the other. I mean, it's interesting if you look at the bifurcation in the Psy-War, how to the left, Charlie Kirk is a saint, Daniel Penny is a vigilante. But to the right, no, that's a racist and a murderer. And then on the left, you've got George Floyd and Jordan Neely. They see Jordan Neely as a violent menace and George Floyd as essentially irredeemable. And yet, to the left, they're somewhat elevated as victims of an oppressive system, and therefore they're martyrs. So it's perfectly split. That's why it's going to be interesting to see what happens on October the 14th, which is Charlie Kirk Remembrance Day, because he needs another holiday. And that happens to be George Floyd's birthday. And some of the, I'm not going to say leaders of Antifa, but one of their major PR people is talking about organizing a national George Floyd Appreciation Day for October the 14th. But you see how it's perfectly split. Okay, so now, I just brought up, again, my reasoning for thinking that Marilyn Manson's album and the song One Assassination Under God was likely about Charlie Kirk. And I'm saying that the Charlie Kirk thing was planned, that there was going to be a Charlie Kirk, there was going to be a live assassination shot to the throat, a JFK-like thing, as foreshadowed in the video, that it was going to happen. And it was planned as far back as 1999 when that video came out. Which makes perfect sense when you realize Snake Eyes came out in 98. I mean, how old is this story? You know, there are indicators that, I mean, in fact, the earliest examples of Donald Trump in media programming is 1958 Trackdown, End of the World. If you don't want to look back even further to the Barron Trump stuff. Elon Musk, pre-existed Elon Musk. He came out of the head of Werner von Braun and even adapted some of those personality traits. Okay, so we kind of glossed over, but we'll delve deeper tomorrow into the Jezebel witches. Lean Dion says, Erika Kirk said Charlie Kirk was the North Star of free speech. Yeah, they called him a master builder. A master builder. Lost Age says, is Freemasonry just truth or bait or part of the theater? It seems they could throw it out to rile the conspiracy folks. Yeah, I don't think you could say the Masons, because these are identifiable organizations. But what we're really talking about is what I call a security clearance society. But there's something to it. We're talking about, in other words, the numbers, the call signs, the hints that they put out there. Those are indicators, I would say. But it's kind of like, as you say, could it be truth or bait? Yeah, it largely could be. It's not like we're talking about you could go to your local lodge, join it, and now you're participating in some kind of psychological operations or conspiracies whatsoever. I think they just sit around and have like lunch on Wednesday nights. But we are talking about a secret society network for all intents and purposes that does have the same basic framework. And that's why I was saying it wasn't just the Masons. I was a part of this Thelemic group, and their initiation was the exact same, but instead of the Judeo, Old Testament stuff, it was all Egyptian, and it was labeled as an Egyptian mystery school. But we're talking about the mystery schools, and what we essentially see is that the masses are mystified. There's a veil, or the hoodwink, or the screen that separates them from what those who have seen the light are able to perceive. We're talking about a knowledge disparity. So those in the light have an advantage over those in the dark. One of the best examples I can point out in movies is The Village, where you have a group of people growing up in a village, and it seems idyllic. They're all happy. It looks like about 18th century. Nothing modern. But then you find out that no, it's actually the 20th century. They live in the middle of a wilderness. No planes fly over. And their parents don't want the children brought up in the modern world. So they basically put them back a few centuries. And they say, oh, you can't go out of the village because there's monsters out there. Now, how did they keep the people in the village? To keep them ignorant, to keep them in a state of relative disempowerment where they're completely dependent. They do psyops. The elders dress up like monsters and run around in the woods and kill animals and essentially create the illusion that the threat is real. Lean Dion says, hey, worshipful master, can I get another serving of dessert, please? Yeah, well, here's the thing, too. Because there's some aspects to it that are relevant to what we're seeing. Because when we talk about the degrees, what are you really looking at in the degrees? You're looking at a play. The person who's brought in, the entered apprentice who's initiated. When you're brought in, you have lines to speak. You have a wardrobe to wear. You're basically playing the part of King Solomon's architect. And so everybody plays a part. And this is the same for all of the rituals. You go up fourth to 32nd degree in the Scottish Rite. It's all theater. Costumes, elaborate costumes. A lot of work goes into it. So what you can say about what they call the craft is that it's largely stagecraft. It's a bunch of theater. I mean, it's actually, if you think about it, it's probably a lot of fun. I didn't stick around. I'll be honest with you, there were elements of gang stalking I wasn't comfortable with. The Hidden Hand says, to go beyond E8 in the military, you need to be a Mason. You know, that wouldn't shock me. What made me interested in the topic itself was I overheard things, I saw things, and I started asking questions. And then I did notice that. I was like, okay, you can kind of see that the people who join this particular club have a lot of influence. Where I was, I think it was Prince Hall. It's like, at first I thought it was just status symbols. But the point of it is, we're talking about a group that has a secret society that functions in front of everybody because they're ignorant to their symbols. They can't see it. And that's why I think it's highly significant that we do see hallmarks of hoaxes that oftentimes seem to refer to this, like the 33 stuff. Well, here's why it's relevant. You know how many of these psyops, specifically like the Black Lives Matter martyr psyops, but in general martyr psyops, they tend to revolve around the central myth in the Masonic lore, which is the martyrdom of Hiram Abiff. It is a consistent aspect. So, because they put it there, we're just pointing it out. But it's not just that. I mean, I can see the Egyptian mystery school symbolism all over NASA. There's a lot of thelemic, even I would say like Ordo Templi Orientis stuff on Elon Musk's operation with SpaceX. In fact, SpaceX is more decidedly New Aeon, Aleister Crowley, more Crowley than Masonic. But it's all the same. I mean, it's all part of one syncretic system. It's all integrated, and that's what kind of made me look closer at this stuff. Is I was already studying symbolism and syncretism and how these religions can be created, and how they can merge myths and repackage things. And I started noticing things regarding NASA that I thought, wow, that's more like religious pageantry than science. Okay, just a moment here. Appears that we had, I don't know what we said. Let's go ahead and wait a moment here. We have 92 people listening. Are we back on? All right, so just to recap, we talked about the Erika Kirk music video from 13 years ago. We talked about the Jezebel witches, Marilyn Manson, Joe Rogan, and all the people talking about predictive programming right now. It's a very hot topic, and none of them know how to use it. They don't know where to contextualize it. So one of the things that we need to do now, oh yeah, No Kings, thank you, Polecat. No Kings is mobilizing right now. So it should be interesting next month. I'm looking forward to Halloween. I saw some Laura Loomer masks for sale. I might get one. Laura Loomer. When somebody told me, I was like, let me guess. Jigsaw. Just painted it flesh tone. But no, it's literally a Laura Loomer. It's called Loomer Gooner or something. It's hilarious. Okay, so to kind of reiterate, the number of people talking about snake eyes is ridiculous. And a lot of the people are arriving at the correct conclusion. Oh yeah, Saw masks. It's Saw. Isn't it Jigsaw? Is that the character? But look, a lot of the people talking about it don't know what to do with the information. They don't know how to contextualize it. They're like, I don't know what it is. Well, we do know. And it goes back. You go back to the earliest psyops you can think of, and you will find entertainment media in the books, in the movies, in the music, that mirror what's happening, even what they're talking about. That's why I brought up the Charlie Kirk, Joe Rogan conversation. Because real time, what they were talking about, and this is the #1 podcast in the world, so we're talking about platforms with significant reach. When I mentioned the Hulu show, The Tempest, this isn't some fringe thing that a few people are watching. No, this is the #1 in Japan and South Korea, Turkey, top 10 throughout Australia, Canada. I mean, it's on blast on September 10th. And you have the character getting shot just like Charlie Kirk, and you have the whole story. Like, after watching the first 3 episodes, I kind of knew the story about Erika Kirk. You have to see the video that I posted last night on the matter, because I was juxtaposing a video of Kirk on stage and her corresponding, what I call predictive programming proxy in the Tempest. Pippi says, ego and emotion are your servants, nothing less. Yeah, ego is one of the final guardrails. So there's 2 guardrails that truthers need to get over to reach the off-world stage. First one, and this is the difficult one, is the ego. If you can't admit you're wrong, if you can't admit that you've been running with a bad model and you need to fix it or replace it, if you can't admit that you were running with misinformation, if you don't have that basic humility, you're not going to get very far off of the world stage. You're not going to make it to the edge. You won't get off the Truman Show. And it's not a strike against your character. If you go to a professional magic show, all the magic tricks are going to fool you if it's good. You know, we are dupable. We can be fooled in a number of ways. And it's important to keep that in mind. It's a vulnerability that none of us can escape. But then, once you overcome that, you realize, okay, I recognize I was lied to. I fell for the lies. People don't know they've been lied to me, and it's a world of lies. Welcome to the lie world order. So you figure that out. But then the next guardrail is the bloody one, where the barrier that keeps people from seeing through the fakery is their inability to accept or even entertain the hypothetical that nobody dies in psyops. I mean, that's axiomatic. Nobody dies in psyops. If you can find an example of a psychological operation where somebody could feasibly have died, please let us know. Because people don't die in psyops. We used to debate endlessly about this. They're like, well, there were some jumpers. But what about the planes? Well, I don't believe in planes. They were CGI. What about the Pentagon? Or what about Shanksville? No. Okay, well, we subtract those. How many are we talking about? But it's because they have in their mind the concept that the buildings are always buzzing with activity, like beehives. But what they're not accounting for is that in the Twin Towers and around the area all day, all morning, there were already drills going on. There were 88 drills. We're talking about closed movie sets. Jordan, if you have any information, by all means, post it. See, I don't hide from information. I seek it out. But if you can't, first of all, when somebody dies, we don't say it's fake. We don't just say it's fake. You can't say it's fake if your claim is it's fake because I feel like it's fake. You have to qualify it. So what are your hoax indicators? Start with that. If you don't have any hoax indicators, if you don't have reasons to think it's fake other than you have a feeling in your gut, like you're thinking, like, oh, my intestines told me. No, it doesn't count. We don't traffic here in low information takes. I mean, all day long, you can mock the people who are low information believers and believe any headline. But we also have to be very critical of low information disbelievers. People who will say, oh, that's not true because I say so. Sorry, that doesn't count. You can't appeal to your own authority. We have to remain objective here. So first of all, somebody getting shot or stabbed in a subway, that's not an extraordinary claim. That's not a claim where you're like, that's got to be fake. No, the only way you would want to even start the inquiry as to whether or not it's fake is if it sets off certain red flags. Even the subway killing, I had no reason to think it was fake. Not at first. I mean, it's not that shocking. However, there's always a however. You suspend judgment, you wait for more information, and that will generally give you a better indicator. And the way the story was picked up and weaponized and politicized, I was already at the point of, okay, Probably fake. Then you see Elon Musk. Hey guys, there's $1 million. I'll pay a bunch of artists to do murals of her all over the country. Which didn't happen because people have no attention span. People don't even remember her name. And I'm not saying her name. And I'm not Charlie Kirk. Matt hides like we're all Charlie Kirk now. And your sister's the girl in the subway getting stabbed. Like, no, I'm not taking psyops personally. What is it with these comedians with their crappy takes on psyops? Owen Benjamin's like, I believe that Charlie Kirk was killed just like the news said, and therefore social media is dangerous and everybody needs digital IDs to use social media. I'm like, aren't you the most banned comedian in the world, and now you're advocating for censorship over a psyop that anybody should be able to see through? Anyway, to get back to what Jordan was saying, probably sarcastically, passive-aggressively, which is kind of pathetic. Just going to address it really quick. Daredevil's dying. The idea that a daredevil would die doing a daredevil stunt, that's not an extraordinary claim. Like, people die climbing Mount Everest. People die doing all sorts of stunts, hang gliding, rock climbing. People die doing dangerous things. So if somebody is dying doing a daredevil stunt, why would you assume it's fake? Unless you had reasons to think it's fake. And so when it came to this particular daredevil dying in a daredevil stunt, well, I mean, what makes that extraordinary? And then also in terms of fakeability, your job here, if you were trying to make your case, would be, well, demonstrate the fakeability of a public event where there was really like no place for the person to have gone. Ollie Goering says people died in binge eating competitions. Yes. Well, one other point that I've been bringing up lately, in addition to hoax indicators, is the concept of the blindfolded skeptic. Because some people will try to straw man what we do. And they will say, oh, you guys just say everything's fake. Or it's on TV, so it's fake. Like, no, we do not go with that. You do, in fact. If your default is the media is not lying, then you're running with everything is real. So everything is real, everything is fake. It's the same philosophical error. But that's not what we're doing here. So I think it's important to clarify here from the outset that we do not start with the idea that everything is fake. We're only talking about events that would be considered extraordinary, but also we're not merely relying on what we see on the screen or merely relying on headlines. A headline and a single clip is not enough to know for sure it's real, not enough to know for sure it's fake. You need to get peripheral information. Context counts. Even in this case, with the Charlie Kirk thing, at first I thought it was probably real. But then I really got to thinking about it, and I'm like, wait a minute here. If this fits the general pattern, there's gonna be indicators, and let's wait and see. So 33 hours later, they catch the shooter, and then we start seeing all the predictive, the concurrent programming, and it's really pretty much aligning with every other previous fake event. And then it really dawned on me that they don't kill crisis actors. They don't kill people in psyops. They're not gonna make an exception. Why would this one suddenly be real? So we can't fall into the habit of believing something because it's shocking and you don't know how to debunk it. And I bring up the magic show analogy. Just because you don't know how they did the trick doesn't mean it's real. And moreover, the world stage is a magic show, not a snuff film. So that's the bloody guardrail. If you still think it's a snuff film, you're never gonna get out of their horror show. It's a magic trick. The Hidden Hand says, I'm wondering if Kirk's children are even there. As I looked up the pictures, all I could find of them facing away from the camera. Yeah, it's really weird. In all of their photos, the children's faces are hidden. And I thought, okay, this could be a completely fake thing. A fake marriage. I think that Erika Kirk has the background. Her father or her mother worked with DHS. His father was an architect of Trump Tower. There's some suggestions here that this is like an arranged marriage. Their kids are probably fake. Maybe real, but I don't know. But also, they showed his parents grieving at the event, but we only saw the backs of their heads. So I'm starting to think that Charlie Kirk is a construct, just like Elon Musk. Don't fall for the illusion. I know it's a good movie, but he's an alt-right shitposter and a 4chaner. And maybe he's got some aptitude for engineering and computer animation, I'm sure. I'm sure he's picked up some things. But he's not a real-life Iron Man, and he's not taking anybody to Mars. Hidden Hand says Erika was Trump's model. I know, did you see that face he made? Like Donald Trump's, his predatory grimace he made when he was hugging Erika Kirk on the stage, that was the Robbie Parker smile of the Charlie Kirk Psyop. And there were 100,000 people at that event. And when she delivered that triple axel moment, everybody cried, or almost. I counted. There were 99,999 people crying. The one person not crying was Erika Kirk. Reality Witness says CK the Construct, a manufactured martyr. Yeah, I'm saying this guy's a manufactured martyr, that the character was already planned back when he was still a child, like in the 90s, before he was selected for the role. But yeah, her connection with Trump in the past, Miss Arizona. In fact, it was as Miss Arizona, where she's in that music video, where she's like rappelling past the number 910 above Fremont. And then she comments, and her comment is hilarious. What a blast Tyler and I had shooting the video. Ted Stryker says, I heard and read the data is not part of Trump Towers. Yeah, I have to verify that. There's a lot of stuff going around that could be narrative designed to make Erika Kirk look guilty, like she did it. Anything to say that he's not really dead. Critterfest Sanctuary says, Western Kentucky IPS remote fan base reporting in, sir. Yeah, I got inspired by Charlie Kirk for real. Yeah, Triple Axel. So Triple Axel, Inks G, is in the movie Tempest. The woman, the widow who takes over her husband's organization has to give a speech. And she's given a pre-written speech. And she says, you have to cry on camera. You've got to show vulnerability. That will be your triple axel. And if you land it, you will win. So she goes on stage. She shows vulnerability as the widow, takes over the New Republicans, and then everybody cries. And then the lady's like, she did her triple axel. So that's the reference. But I was inspired in the idea that the IPS press club needs to exist. And since Kirk died, TPUSA charters have opened everywhere. And I'm thinking, well, how do we go about chartering press clubs throughout? And I have a couple of ideas. Plain Dakota says, was that ritual death ceremony memorial or an Amway meeting? Yeah, I watched the whole thing just to see what kind of memes would be propagated. Stephen Miller called Erika Kirk, quote, the storm, which again is a Tempest connection. And the storm, Jezebel, and Snake Eyes. And, Snake Eyes also takes place in a Trump-owned Taj Mahal. There are some indications that the character played by Nick Cage is actually Donald Trump. So it's even deeper than we've gone. Jamarian May says IPS needs to do a campus tour challenging students on world stage psyops. See, you're exactly right. So here's the plan. I have a GoFundMe set up to get an office. And I found a place I like. And it's inexpensive. But I also found there's this company that has offices all over. And so you could arrange meetings. And I'm thinking, we need to do auto hoax cons. But instead of investing in venues and doing the convention thing, no, let's just use little office spaces, very minimalistic. But invite people. For example, people from universities, people in the media, people who are even content creators, maybe on the other side, and invite them to these little conventions where we essentially have a concurrent live stream with Zoom and real-time interactions and Q&As. And what we'll be talking about are very specific things that are never really debated. And this is completely outside of the purview of conspiracy conventions. This isn't some chemtrail direct energy weapon thing. No, we'll have a casual conversation about, did anybody die at the Annunciation School shooting? Is Charlie Kirk alive? And it's not that we're trying to draw in big numbers, but we're trying to create effective content to make the points that we need to make. But I have a few places in mind I would like to go to do this. And this would also be a place to push the book. The Handbook for the Recently Deprogrammed, A Skeptic's Guide to the Theater of Psywar, which is a 311-page book, which is comprised of all of our best arguments, observations, and axioms. It's essentially a philosophic framework for approaching media in a whole new way, outside of the binary of mainstream and alternative. It's applied skepticism. And there's a lot of people who've already figured out a lot of this stuff, but what we don't have is a common language. That's why we need this book. The people who look at these things need to have the right language to explain it. Like false flag, no, nothing's a false flag. You have to get rid of the words they give you to confine you, to prevent you from seeing through their illusions. So that's the reason. Yeah, exactly, Inkshi. That's what I'm talking about. There's some office spaces where, I don't know if it's hourly, it's like you rent it for the day and it's convention room, all the amenities, but also, importantly, internet. Art of Thinking Out Loud, Common Sense Analytics says Charlie Kirk is somewhere with Asada Shakur watching YouTube. Somebody, I think it was John B. Wells, said he's probably in the UAE. Others think he's in New Zealand. There's kind of a clue where the shooter is sitting next to his computer and there's a map in New Zealand of Goat Island, which has great snorkeling. I thought it was spelunking. It's got snorkeling. But there's a place out there called Valhalla. Now, what's interesting about Valhalla is this is where the warriors go while they await Ragnarok, the end of the world. So they hang out in this paradise waiting for the end of the world. So when Kash Patel, who wouldn't be admitted to Valhalla, when he goes on stage, when he goes on the media and he's like, Charlie Kirk, we'll see you in Valhalla. You know, people thought that was a strange reaction. I mean, I guess you could call him a warrior or something, but, you know, even a Christian warrior is not going to go to see Thor. No, they're going to the Christian heaven. So it's kind of an oddball comment, but now it makes sense. So I'm watching this show, The Tempest, and it turns out that the contractor, the hired hitman who's actually protecting the widow, works for a company called the Valkyries. Well, Valkyries are the Norse goddesses who escort the fallen heroes to Valhalla. So another overlap between that movie and the Charlie Kirk situation. But it could also be a reference to wherever these people go after they serve their time on the world stage. He's probably hanging out with Timothy McVeigh, to be honest. They're hanging out reading the Turner Diaries together. Polecat78 says Charlie's wife's surname, Frantzve. Okay, it's a variant of France which derives from the Franciscus, meaning Frenchman or freeman. Interesting, because I read that isn't Charlie meaning freeman as well? And why did Trump call him a master builder? Erika the Viking says Tominoid. Yeah, Erika the Viking, Erika the Storm. And when she stood there with her, blonde hair, the white suit, and the fireworks, I thought she looked like a Valkyrie. Like, intentionally. They created this on purpose. There's a link in the chat if you want to join the Discord. And if you join the Discord, just say something. and you'll get a wrench. If you don't say anything, you will be automatically booted out. We're just trying to prevent lurkers, bots, and spies. One of our old friends, MG, is apparently bored because this is weird, but on September 10th, he accessed my Twitter account and he attached it to a fake fundraiser that he put under my name. Then he tried to hack into my SoundCloud last night, and this morning he tried to access my Facebook. So he's in one of my email addresses, and has been for years. And occasionally he tries to get into my social media through just blunt force hacking. Never works. Calm Down says, the author of the Turner Diaries was an American white supremacist neo-Nazi leader, William Luther Pierce. The book was published in 1978 under the pseudonym Andrew MacDonald. Yeah, and what was the birthday of William Luther Pierce? 9/11, 1933. Timothy McVeigh, inspired by the book, after wanting revenge for the 33-year-old Dave Koresh, whose followers thought he was Jesus, who was burned at 33, Timothy McVeigh goes on and does a terror attack, and he gets executed at the age of 33 on 6/11, which I point out is an inverted 9/11, which makes sense if you look at 9/11 external terrorist, 6/11 domestic terrorist. There's some stuff in the numbers in the script that are consistent. Like, you will consistently see the number 6/11 associated with Waco, white nationalism, and the right. And some incoming white nationalist 9/11. You know what time Trump was shot? And by the way, Trump kicks off his last campaign in Waco, the day after Netflix releases Waco, American Apocalypse. But then you fast forward to Butler, he's shot at 6/11 at 33 seconds. So the 6/11-33 has connections to McVeigh. And by the way, 33 is the age of the Muhammad Atta, who 90 days after the execution of McVeigh flew into one of the Twin Towers. Yeah, William Luther Pierce, September 11th, 33 to July 23rd, 2002. So the purpose to the book, Handbook for the Recently Deprogrammed, is this. A lot of people have already broken free of the program. Like, they recognize that media has been hijacked. But what we're trying to do here is extrapolate from that knowledge. So what does it mean that influence operations, psyops, simulated events are portrayed as real and grafted onto our collective agreement as to what happened? What does it mean? It's like you accept a lie. Now the liar has a little bit of power over you. But we're talking now about every day is a page in the history book. Your newspaper is a page in the history book. If the newspaper contains just maybe one or two lies every day, it aggregates. But it's not just that. It's that the events that they put all the effort into simulating are the ones that take all the clicks, hog the spotlight, suck up all the air in the room. So it's these events that drive the mainstream. Everything else bounces off of it under the presupposition that these things are real. So our news media is bent. It's a news bent reality that we inhabit. So now you're looking now at fake news is actually fake history. So a lot of people want to talk about fake history, like, did they mud flood the world 300 years ago and now they rewrote everything? Hey, you could speculate all day long, but you're not going to get anywhere. Yeah, you're basically looking in, I think, at a dead end. What we can verify and demonstrate and prove every day through empirical research, and we can even predict it, is that they're faking history every day. That's what fake news is. Fake news is fake history. Calm Down says, have you looked into the order? Yeah, I want to see that. I just looked at the order is a reference to the Turner Diaries, the name of the racist organization so the phrase turning point is significant because the turning point is when Earl Turner flies his plane into the Pentagon. Sound familiar? Sound 9/11-y? That's why the author's birth date 9/11 is kind of intriguing here. By the way, anybody know the Pentagon's groundbreaking date? 9/11, 1941. But after he flies the plane into the thing, that's when the attack begins. That's the revolution. That's the turning point. So it's intriguing here because it's an airborne bomb, like a plane loaded with bombs. One of the rounds that the shooter had, the alleged shooter, Tyler Robinson, and we'll get into Tyler Robinson and his connection to Robin Westman, the Annunciation shooter. We'll get into all that. But one of his rounds, etched on the side, had the directional inputs for a video game called Helldiver 2. If you go to Helldiver 2 and you push like up, right, something, it drops a 500 kilogram Eagle bomb. So it's kind of interesting here because immediately after the shooting, the talking point among all of Kirk's friends were, "This is the turning point." And that phrase was reiterated again and again. So it just kind of reinforces what I've been saying, that Turner Diaries was always the script that was being launched by Turning Point USA. But yeah, I'll have to check out that movie, The Order. A couple of other things. So on the anniversary of Waco, McVeigh does the attack. Well, when Donald Trump was in the court on trial, it was the 19th when Maxwell Azrello set himself on fire. So 4/19 is a very interesting date. You know, on 4/19, 1999, the Space Needle in Seattle was designated a historic monument. Let's see here. Marcel says, you can't make this up, scripted beginning to end. Yeah, I use the term meta-script because how else are you going to describe what we're talking about here? Pre-planned events, and the pre-planned events being the ones that drive the major narrative on every major issue, that there is the definition of scripted history. They don't have to script everything, but they frame everything. Plain Dakota, do you have mods? You know, I will get some mods. I mean, we have basic rules. So the Blue Wrench Lodge is pretty much open, but we are more or less, it's not that we're intolerant, but we automatically are going to debate certain things. Certain things are just already refuted. Red Wrench is for those who want to be involved in the IPR Press Club. Black Wrench is really only for people who've met above ground in real life. But Red Wrench is the place to get to. Blue Wrench is where we do our basic research. But if you want to be more involved in the IPS Insider, any of the AI stuff we're doing, we're creating AI agents to help fill out what I call the parallel media. Because what we have is, I mean, just looking back easily, we'll just go back 50 or 60 years. We'll start with the Kennedy assassination. We've got a little more than 60 plus years of media fakery. And every one of these events needs a wiki-style article to pro-offer another perspective. So in other words, we have to have a record that is inclusive of not just the mainstream and the alternative, but this third perspective. And I'm using bots for a lot of that. But anyone who wants to get involved in any of these projects, it's the Red Wrench you can get into in Discord. But I don't expect a lot of problems in the Discord. I think we've eliminated a lot of that stuff already. And a lot of the people that were problematic, I think, were paid. You know how many articles, you got to look it up, but it's actually very well known that the feds have been hiring contractors to spy on Discord servers, to troll Discord servers, to propagandize in Discord servers. And the shooter was radicalized on Discord. All right, well, we're going to go ahead and continue this conversation tomorrow. There's still quite a lot, but what I want to focus on tomorrow in a Zoom conference is the Jezebel witch connection. And probably we'll go over a few things in general. There's some other things as well, like where is this going? I need to watch the the Hulu series for another episode, because I want to know how this nuke situation fits into this. Because one of the things Stephen Miller said, in addition to calling Erika the Storm, is he said that we were dragons. Like, they're throwing out a lot of fascinating rhetoric here. And this Kraken thing, we unleash the dragon, this reoccurring theme. And the storm also. You know, the storm goes back to January 6th. Storming the Capitol. Or the storm is coming, the big Q thing. The Q people haven't had a lot lately to go off of. They're still there. There was some Q guy who was convinced that Charlie Kirk was going to pop out of the coffin and JFK Jr. was going to rappel down from the rafters. And I'm like, no, that's just bad hopium. No QAnon believer has ever been vindicated. But one of the things that I'm sort of happy about is that in all the analysis we've seen in these recent events, people are either chasing second shooters or third shooters or fourth shooters or communist bees, which is Candace Owens' latest iteration of madness. I mean, she's almost word salading at this point. But outside of that, there's a lot of people who are looking at squibs, CGI, media fakery. That's the direction that a lot of people are going. And what we have to recognize is that they don't have a platform. Like, we don't have a platform. This is our platform. The IPS think tank was set up to platform a group of people who are not on the red pill prescription, who aren't hitting the Q pipe. We're not drinking the Kool-Aid at Alex Jonestown. So where do we go? You know, like, I don't want to be aligned with people like Stu Peters. I mean, you look at the people who populate Trutherville, it's a bunch of hucksters and engagement baiters, provocateurs, and feds. There's nobody authentic. And one thing that this Charlie Kirk thing should teach you right now, or should have taught you, is that none of these alt media voices are investigating. Owen Schroyer, he's not investigating. They're not looking for clues and trying to figure stuff out. They're not doing what we're doing. Candace Owens isn't, I'm going to get to the bottom of who killed my friend. Meanwhile, Turning Point USA is not doing any kind of conspiracy theory conjecture. You would think that Charlie Kirk's people would spend a few episodes talking about who killed Charlie. But no, they're satisfied with the mainstream story. But all these conspiracy theorists, Ian Carroll, Owen Schroyer, whatever, all these annoying people, none of them are investigating. Like, you're mistaken if you think that these are journalists. Oh, they're doing what we're doing. They're just Googling, looking at pictures. They're on Twitter. No, they're not. They're dispensing breadcrumbs along well-worn rabbit trails. They're propagandizing engineered narratives to target demographics for the purposes of controlling the dialogue around this whole thing, maintaining it within the parameters of the world stage fictional universe. That's their objective. They will talk about every single possible thing to have taken Charlie out, but they will not say the word squib. They will not even go down that road. They're not allowed to. So this is the big separation. The breakaway from Trutherville is when those who are looking outside of the traditional explanations of things, the orthodox way of looking at things, when they start recognizing that, hey, none of these people with the big microphones are even willing to talk about squibs or that Charlie's not dead. They can't even say it. And Candace Owens can't say it. And it's not that she is trying to protect her reputation. No, she's on the other side. She knows the score here. She knows he's not dead. And if she said it, do you know what would happen? It would get around too much. It would actually embolden us. And that's what we need to happen. Some people held out hope. They said, oh, she saw some video and there's no blood, no gore behind him. And some said, maybe she's going to see through it. And I said, no, that's not her job. It's some kind of setup. And it was. They used that as a setup for the second shooter. Like, oh, it couldn't have been the big gun from back there because there was no blood behind him. Brian says, IPS minor correction, squib is the wrong word. Blank would be a better choice. Well, I'm referring to the blood spurting neck collar, the prosthetic neck, essentially. Like, and I've seen these. It's like a wrap. And if you look at the way that the inflation or whatever it is blows up around them, I get the idea. You're hearing a CO2 going off, but Anx G says you can't wake up sleepwalkers. Yes, that's true. You cannot wake sleepwalkers. I mean, here's who you can reach. Because on the world stage, the mainstreamers aren't going to process this because they don't have special effects in their frame of reference. They don't know about how deep fakes have been used. And I'm not talking about digital deep fakes. I'm talking about invented people, fake people, even without including masks and that kind of, we're talking about just basic espionage. Like, no, we already live in a deep fake world. But special effects, media manipulation, simulated events, bending our worldview toward the simulation that they create for us to internalize, yeah, that is not accessible to the mainstreamers. They believe what they see on TV. They believe headlines, and they have no incentive to go outside of that. The people who don't trust that because their instincts are probably telling them that they're being lied to, they get caught up in Trutherville. Those are the only ones we can reach. You can't reach the woke left. You can't reach the normies, Normieville. The only people who could possibly reach off-world stage are in Trutherville, and they're caught up behind one of 2 or 3 guardrails. Either the bloody guardrail, which is difficult to overcome for some, and then there's the ego barrier. The bloody guardrail is effective. You have Steven Crowder, who said that he only watched it once. He thought it was in bad taste to watch it multiple times. Well, if you're not willing to look at it, then how can you judge it real or fake? Well, in their world, everything is presumed to be real. So you have to understand where they're coming from. So I never speak to somebody who's mainstream mediated from an off-world stage perspective. I mean, maybe I could speak to them as a MSM plus conspiracy theorist and get some middle ground, but I don't even go there. I talk to people where they're at. Brian says, we don't like folk from Normieville. No, you know what? All my friends are in Normieville and Woketown, and a few of them are in Trutherville. Actually, a lot of them I know lean towards Trutherville. It's kind of funny. No, all my friends are world stagers. But they're blissfully unaware. It's mind control. It's like a religion. Look, the mainstream media, mainstream mediation globally, that is your one world religion. All the conspiracy theorists used to say, the new world order is going to come and they're going to make us all have a religion. And the Christian truthers are like, no, we're not going to abandon our faith. It's like, no, you guys are already in it. You just have to expand your definition of what religion is and recognize how the ones who create the religions have always employed syncretism, merging various worldviews and synchronizing the minds of all the sheeple, getting them all in the same big sheep pen. And what mainstream mediation has done is it has created a global sheep pen. It is the de facto one world religion. It's got its myths, it's got its martyrs, it's got its miracles, it's got its priesthood, but it's under different names. You know, one way to look at it is, if you look at like a holy book as a worldview, self-contained. So the Old Testament is like what came before. New Testament is not only what came after, but it's considered a living Bible. It's considered to be relevant to what's happening right now. And it's kind of an interesting connection here because you've got like history, which is what already happened, and then you have news, which is what's happening right now. So if you look at the media as the state church, you can look at our history as the Old Testament and look at the news as what I call the News Testament. Because what you're actually getting is a worldview. And it is the one world religion. It is a complete belief system And it's certainly split. There are people who still adhere to the traditional, but that is now made a subset of this dominant paradigm. And they haven't really changed. I mean, they've renamed things. I mean, what do you think aliens are? All the atheists are comfortable talking about aliens all day. What are aliens? Aliens are angels syncretized with science fiction to appeal to the atheistic believers in the new scientific paradigm. And I say scientific in quotes, because science implies skepticism, and there's nothing skeptical about going into the MSM box unquestioningly. But that's the default. Nobody is born deprogrammed. I mean, you're born into this thing, you're programmed into it. To be deprogrammed is actually a volitional act. You don't arrive here by accident. It requires the conscious rejection of mainstream mediation, of skepticism, to the point where informed disbelief replaces compulsory belief, and you're left with a lot of, I don't know, but I know why I don't believe. JJ Scene Graphics says, someone I know went back to Trutherville over this. So their problem is this. If they went back to Trutherville, it's because the visuals were compelling. And I warned everyone, I said, as generative AI improves, we're not going to be able to rely solely on them screwing up in the visuals to see through it. That's not going to be enough. You have to become a blindfolded skeptic. You have to operate as though we're not going to get any visuals. And can you deconstruct it based on all of the peripheral information and the context? And yes, you can. It's not just about it looks fake. No, we are informed disbelievers. And so if your friend believes it because Charlie's death looked grisly, then they fell for the argument or the appeal to authority that the screen has. They haven't rejected. So they're logically fallacious if they think I can believe it because I saw it on TV. And so what you have to tell your friend who's over there in Normieville or Trutherville, hey, before you can say he's really dead, I got a laundry list of hoax indicators that you need to deal with. And if you can't refute every single one of these, your claim that it's real has no standing. You're a crisis actor. You're basically reacting to theatrical blood. Brian says, how can you teach a boomer skepticism in an off-world stage framework? You know, there are people of all demographics who figured this out. I think that the main thing here, when it comes to is somebody going to be able to grasp this, is if they've already become disenchanted, not only with mainstream, but they've started to see through the controlled opposition. So I'm only looking for people who are 80% of the way out of their Truman Show. If they're still in it, no. Actually, we don't want them. We want to debate them. The people who are clinging to the guardrails, who are like, yeah, he is dead for sure. It's like, okay, we want them in that position so we can debate them. Because it's in debate that we can expose the weaknesses, the flaws in one another's arguments. And I always approach these things with the steel man approach. People have straw-manned meta-script and concurrent/predictive programming analysis. They straw-man it all the time, but they have never refuted it. And I'm like, okay, you can subtly mock it, you can dismiss it, but now it's reality denial at this point. Meanwhile, I steel man their arguments. Like, what is the best possible argument to suggest that these relationships between entertainment and the news events are the result of higher powers or simulations or the demiurge? And I've looked into these various explanations, and I've concluded that, like with Mandela effect, a lot of these things are deliberately planted misdirection narratives put there for the sole purpose of getting the critical thinkers and skeptics off the trail. And it's worked. Hidden Hand says, Kirk's chair literally glitches to the table it was on. I saw that. So I have a couple of theories about it. One, poor video quality. Or two, you know how in the ISS you see examples of augmented reality? Like they can make an object appear to float around the room live. I thought, well, what if They want to obscure any kind of giveaways when they're moving the body. So you insert a little animation of a chair, and it didn't perfectly line up. Because you often see in the ISS microphones going through necks, hands going through microphones. You see all kinds of glitches where they're not perfectly lined up with the inserted artifact. And I think the chair might have been a digital screw up. And she says, kayfabe convinces normies. Yeah, well, what we have to do to the normies is this. Because the only power they have is to ridicule, call you crazy. I've been called a lot of names. You know, because ever since I said that Raja Jackson was faking it and that Psycho Stu wasn't really unconscious, you know, I had thousands of people on Sean Strickland's Twitter account just saying the worst things. I'm like, that's all you guys have? You're mad, so you throw stones, like you call names, rather than slow down the footage and count the punches for yourself. But yeah, they're convinced by kayfabe. But what you have to let them know is that they do not have the intellectual high ground because they haven't done due diligence. If somebody says, I think it's real because I saw it, and they haven't looked at your hoax indicators, you can tell them, if you haven't addressed the hoax indicators, you haven't done due diligence, you have no standing. Make them do their homework before you even acknowledge their opinion is valid. So you take away the intellectual high ground, and then you go after the moral high ground. Because they'll say, you're a bad person for calling it fake. I'm like, no, you're a bad person for believing agitprop that's used to keep our society divided in this perpetual war. Like, you're part of the problem. If you're going with the controlled opposition talking points, you're actually an enemy of, well, free thinking, free speech. You're an enemy of everything you pretend to be defending. You've been turned against your own interests. That's why I say you have to be a conscientious objector to the Psywar. But you know what got me really looking at this thing about how they plan these things long term is simply that this Charlie Kirkland narrative and the neck wound, these are all elements to the story that pre-existed Charlie Kirk on the world stage by 20 years. But you know what, I have to say, I'm impressed. I was highly impressed watching that memorial service. All those people there, the genuine outpouring of emotion and religiosity. Like, that's the sad part, is that you have these mind war casualties who are just being fleeced, they're being manipulated. It's like they can't see the wolves in sheep's clothing. I have to say that the politicized Christian nationalists are all being duped by wolves in sheep's clothing. Even if they have good intentions, that's fine. I get it. It's not against them. But the people that are running the show are just very dark, sociopathic. You're going to take these people and their legitimate faith and their religion, and you're going to plug it into the psychological warfare matrix and weaponize them through propaganda. I mean, it is really insidious, but it's also just, it's incredible to watch. The bread and circuses. So we got the bread, the circuses, and then you got the clowns in the circus, the Candace Owens, the Ian Carrolls, all the rest of them. I saw Alex Jones dressed up like Adolf Hitler today. Like, it's parody at this point. It's a Poe. Parody of extremism. Lean Dion says Erika is a psycho. Or she plays one on TV. One or the other. To be honest, though, to go on stage and emotionally manipulate people in all this, yeah, that's you wouldn't be wrong if you said that was a little psychopathic. But I call it the lie world order, and I have to wonder, though, is this not benevolent compared to what could be done? Their power is incontestable. You know, contrary to truthers who like to tell themselves people are waking up. People are waking up. No, they're not. This system is in a perpetual tug of war, but no, the balance doesn't shift. Like it may go one way or the other way, back and forth, but at no point does this end. At no point do people wake up in great numbers. So what's next? Okay, so by the way, again, I put out 2 newsletters. So I sent out the music video so you can see what I'm talking about with Erika Kirk in a music video 13 years ago, commenting about what a great day she and Tyler had shooting the video with the weird 910 reference. And then I also posted a breakdown of the music of Marilyn Manson as it connects to the Kennedy saga and the potential, well, the obvious utility of, but maybe the intentionality of one assassination under God actually being about Charlie Kirk. I do think that's the case. And as I said tonight, I watched the music video Coma White where Manson is being JFK, and it's all about this new savior. And the video is very mournful because he dies, but I didn't really note it until I watched it today that he gets shot in the neck. All right, well, this has been great. I'm glad we were able to stay up later. The phone did not overheat for once. Oh, one more thing. So we all know about The Boys. That was the show, season 4, episode 8, Assassination Run. They had to rename it because the character named Homelander, who's based on Trump, is the target of this assassination plot. And it was released around the same time as the Butler shooting. Another example. You got the Homelander with the blood on his face. Well, there's a spin-off from that series. It's called Gen 5, and I just started watching it. Well, season 2, I think it's episode 4 of Gen 5, has this scene where one of the supes, these are superheroes, is levitating a goat. And the goat is named Elon Musk. So the goat's levitated and then it explodes. And now, since we already know that the series has been used for predictive programming with the Trump head wound, what are we to think? That the same series or a spin-off has some obvious predictive programming for Elon Musk levitating and exploding. Well, what could that mean? Maybe Musk is going to space on a one-way trip. Maybe he's going to get challengered. I don't know. I'm just speculating, but no, I watched it, Hidden Hand. It was a goat. I watched the episode. He did send a mouse into space, or some mice, the mighty mice. That's another example of how they clown us. Elon Musk, look it up, the CRS-19 launch, I think it was like December 5th of 2019, they were sending supplies to the space station, and they were also sending genetically modified mice. They called them mighty mice. They said they were modified so their muscles would not atrophy in space. So if you know, Mighty Mouse is the mouse that can float around in space. Well, on the mission where they were sending the mice to space, there happened to be what looked like on the outside of the rocket, mice, which is impossible at Mach 8. Well, the experts came along. Mick West is like, oh no, that's a video compression artifact. I'm like, no, that's not what that is. It looks like a mouse. He said, no, it's ice. It's ice, space ice. So everyone's running with, okay, it's space ice. Well, okay, well, can you at least admit that the space ice happens to look like a mouse running around? And I couldn't get people to admit it, but it's objectively true. You could ask AI, does that look like a mouse? Like if you see a cloud and it's shaped like a mouse, you're going to say that cloud is shaped like a mouse, and people say, yes, that cloud is. Well, I'm saying that space ice is shaped like a mouse. And they don't want to acknowledge how cool that is, considering there's real mice on the inside of the rocket. But anyway, the only logical conclusion there is that the launch that you see is not the same thing that they show you that's supposedly in space. And moreover, that they're playing a joke on us. They had a mighty mouse on the rocket. And it's objectively a mouse. It had a tail, it moved, it had ears. There was no reason to think it wasn't an animated feature. But they had a little bit of plausible deniability. But even if you want to run with, it was ice, or it was some kind of debris. Even if you want to run with that vague explanation, you still can't subtract from the fact that it looked like and it moved like a mouse, which is a miracle considering there were mice on board. So look, we have a lot of reasons to not trust what we see. And then you see Musk at this Charlie Kirk event. So another thing too is, when you see these people on the world stage, and you know they've participated in previous psyops, you have to look at it as a movie set, as a closed movie set. Look at the Kirk thing as a continuation of the Butler thing. Same production company. All right, we veered a little bit off course. We're going to do a Zoom conference tomorrow. I think this is about to get even more interesting. I didn't even get into it, but the ICE facility is being attacked. Somebody wrote anti-ICE on one of the rounds. Clearly a psyop, but you see that going on. So the anti-ICE stuff we'll get into. And then we're coming up in October, No Kings. And we're still living in the wake of Sinners, Mountainhead, and the madness. The Zoom call link will be posted at the newsletter. So if you go to the Substack, go to IPS.monster or go to infiniteplanesociety.com and subscribe. You'll get the Zoom link. So we're using Zoom right now because I don't have phones, but we're going to have a more structured meeting next time. It should be very productive. We're going to bring the most recent information and hoax indicators to go over. Bullet casings are the new manifesto, says Angst G. Yeah, that's been the case since Luigi Mangione. Yeah, the anti-ICE guy killed 3 immigrants. So I'm trying to figure this out. Did he miss? How are they explaining this one? I don't know, but anyway, tomorrow Zoom, you won't want to miss it. We're going to go really pretty much with a fine-tooth comb over everything here. I'm going to catch up on this Hulu series to see if there's, because look, one of the things that's common with these movies and shows, if they have one aspect that predicts what's to come or what has already happened, there may be other stuff you have missed. So for example, Trackdown from 1958 predicted Trump coming to town, building the wall, con man, but it also had him being arrested. Well, CNN and others even noticed this TV show predicted Trump 58 years ago. So in 2016, they're talking about this, but he wasn't arrested for another 8 years. And so I consistently find that like a lot of the movies that predict 9/11 also have foreshadowing for other events as well. This is actually a reoccurring theme. So I'm suspecting here, if we look at this as a model, it's safe to say that what happens in this Hulu series is likely still to come. And that's why I'm so interested in the nuclear submarine thing, because we're about to hit October. And if you know, the Hunt for Red October, about a missing nuke, that is Tom Clancy. And Tom Clancy is widely credited with his prescient novels predicting like 9/11, for example. So we're about to enter maybe a Tom Clancy novel, Hunt for Red October, which has been sort of a story since Alec Baldwin, who dressed up like Trump quite a bit, shot Helena Hutchins, and Baldwin was in the movie Hunt for Red October. Helena Hutchins was from a place in Ukraine. That is where the character's from in that novel. The other person he shot had Donald Trump's birthday, which is kind of intriguing. Yeah, but the Broken Arrow scenario. Now, I don't know, has Rust come out yet? I would like to see it. The Hidden Hand says those rifles don't have numbers. Are they going to crack down on old war rifles? Ooh, good one. Yeah, that's another indicator that you may be looking at a staged event, is that all of the props, every aspect of it, has some kind of political utility, some agenda that could be advanced. I mean, right after this Kirk thing, look what happened. You know, you got the South Park and Jimmy Kimmel to kind of go off the air temporarily. I think Kimmel's back. But you had a lot of right-wingers suddenly endorsing censorship. And the next thing is gun control. And by the way, that's one of the things we're going to talk about tomorrow, weapons. The movie Weapons, as it pertains to not only the Annunciation school shooting, but the Charlie Kirk thing. And how weapons as a school shooting analogy connects to this broader subtext of Turning Point and Turner Diaries and the whole gun grab thing. It's all interconnected, and it was reiterated when Kirk was shot after talking about gun violence. Yeah, Jameer and May, they pulled South Park episode 330. But yeah, if they have new laws and agendas to roll out immediately. But this is a great opportunity because a lot of massive accounts, huge accounts are talking about snake eyes. And if they're talking about snake eyes, then they're ready to understand the Tempest and confront what we're bringing up. They'll have to adopt the terminology, concurrent programming. All right, thanks for the comments. We will be back probably in the Discord tonight, and tomorrow Zoom conference, so make sure you subscribe to the newsletter.